Halifax, a series of Halifax Explosion commemorative markers were formally launched in Halifax at Fort Needham Park on Friday. 3 of the markers are in the park, with the remaining 9 distributed throughout the municipality. Councillor Lyndall Smith speaks beside one of 12 Halifax Explosion commemorative markers. The markers were officially unveiled Friday at Fort Needham Park, home to 3 of the markers: Yvette d'Entremont, Star Metro. The bright summer sun shone down on guest speakers standing beside one of the park's newest monuments, bringing to life the words etched in the rusting metal, "But we must live in hopes of a brighter future." Somewhere the sun is shining. The dark cloud will eventually break, revealing its silvery lining. "We can only add, lead kindly light, amid the encircling gloom, lead thou us on," the monument states, crediting journalist Joseph Sheldon with penning those words in 1917. Read more. Nova Scotia capital marks 100 years since catastrophic Halifax explosion. Article continued below. Fort Needham Park has been designed as a living memorial, a space that recognizes and commemorates the significance of the losses that were suffered 100 years ago, but also supports the vibrancy of this community. Local councillor Lyndall Smith told the crowd of about 50 people gathered for the launch. First-hand explosion stories are etched into rough and rusting metal on one side, while the mirrored surface on the other side reflects ourselves and the present surroundings. In this way, the past and present are brought together, signifying that this history is and will always be part of us and part of the community. The centennial anniversary of the Halifax explosion was marked in 2017. The Corton, weathering steel with a rusty appearance, and stainless steel markers feature text from first-hand accounts of the explosion highlighting the event and recovery. Etched text from one of 12 new Halifax Explosion commemorative markers officially unveiled Friday at Fort Needham Park. The park is home to 3 of the markers: Yvette d'Entremont, Star Metro. Mayor Mike Savage said the 12 commemorative markers were installed throughout the city this spring. He said they're intended to provide a lasting memorial legacy to the explosion, and to connect those sites physically and psychologically back to Fort Needham as the site of the Halifax Explosion Memorial. Jude Gerard was also a guest speaker Friday. A band member of Millbrook First Nation, he spoke about how the catastrophe affected all Nova Scotians and changed the landscape. He took the opportunity to highlight untold stories from the explosion. He acknowledged and spoke aloud the names of 4 children between the ages of 4 hours and 12 years old who were killed in the Halifax explosion. Just a few of the MIKMAQ who lost their lives and whose stories have never been told. As Nova Scotians, we have been told stories our entire lives about the impact of the collisions on the Narrows and the aftermath in the days and weeks that followed. Gerard said, "I remember as a child I learned very little of the effects the explosion had on Africville just down over the hill from where we currently stand right now. As a child, how many of us actually learned about Africville at all? Until recently, no one cared about the decimation of the MIKMAQ settlement that was just across the harbor in what is known as Turtle Grove." Article continued below. Gerard commended everyone involved in the project for their hard work, noting it was a powerful experience to read the text on the commemorative markers. He said he was brought to tears, but also added, "We need to do more to ensure all narratives are told." To illustrate, he pointed to one of the park's new commemorative markers in the distance. "A new city has risen out of the ashes of the old. We rub our eyes and look again, but the vision does not fade," reads part of the text on that monument. The aftermath of the 1917 Halifax ship explosion is shown in a file photo. Somber commemoration ceremonies were held across Halifax to mark 100 years since the port city was devastated by a wartime blast that killed or injured about 11,000 people. The Canadian Press, National Archives of Canada, Gerard cited that passage and again asked people to think about the untold Halifax explosion stories. "The new city remains and grows building by building, street by street, amid the tumultuous music of 1,000 hammers. Wholesome discord of 1,000 saws." As you tour the park today reading the words on the markers and in every piece of metal, I ask you to keep in mind what stories are untold. Gerard asked the crowd, whose houses were rebuilt and whose were not. as the thousands of hammers created music, as the thousands saws hummed out a tune, who was afforded the economic opportunity to rebuild the city? Who benefited, and which community members were told they were worth 20% less than others? Read more. Maritime Museum looks back 100 years at the Halifax Explosion. Gerard said, although we're in an age of reconciliation, it's time for reconciliation. He implored those gathered to start looking at the 10 principles of reconciliation to guide their daily professional and personal lives. Relationships begin when we listen to each other's stories. Reconciliation begins when we believe those stories. Let's continue to build these relationships by telling all the stories, he said. Stop ignoring or dismissing narratives of some of our citizens so we can get on with reconciliation. We can begin through real collaboration with all of those gathered here today to work with the MIKMAQ Nation in creating plaques or markers throughout her that tell the rich MIKMAQ history in the area. When the mayor offered his remarks, he acknowledged what he called Gerard's emotional opening remarks. All aspects of Halifax 100 years ago were affected by the explosion. The First Nations through Turtle Grove, Africville, serving members of the military who were here, Savage said. Acadians were killed in the explosion and impacted by the explosion, and today more than ever, as we look at the cost to the city, we think about the diversity of our city. There's a lot of things to be very proud of in this city, but we also keep in mind that there's more that we can do. Fort Needham is described by the municipality as a memorial park established by the Halifax Relief Commission in remembrance of the victims of the 1917 Halifax explosion. The park was deeded to the city of Halifax in 1942 with the condition that it be used as a public park forever. The 15.6-acre park is one of the largest public open spaces in the north end of the Halifax Peninsula. In addition to its commemorative function, it provides recreation and green space. More information related to the commemorative markers can be found on the Halifax Explosion Companion website https://intothedebrisfield.ca/markers. The Halifax Explosion commemorative markers that aren't in Fort Needham Park can be found at the following locations: corner of Vincent and Devonshire, corner of Kenny on Devonshire North Park beside the Armory, corner of Bell and Ahern, University Avenue in the Boulevard near Summer Street. Intersection DeWolf Park and Bedford, Barnstead and Bears Road. At the Cemetery of Unknown Victims, Dartmouth Common near Wise Road. Dartmouth Ferry Terminal Park. Yvette D'Entremont is a Halifax-based reporter covering health, environment and education. Follow her on Twitter, @d'Entremont.